morning, everyone. Today is the 16th of August of 2025. The impulse of today is seeking clarity and glimpsing horizons. We'll see some dreams, some questions, and which will help us enter this impulse of today. Okay. We live immersed in many influences nowadays. Technology brings many benefits. No one discusses that, no one denies that, but they put also us in contact with something that is quite dispersing, which almost never coincides with what we are supposed to live or experience. We are constantly taken out of a horizon that corresponds to us, from a trajectory that corresponds to us, and we are moved this way and that way by so many impulses. So clarity is not something that will replace our experience on the path. Clarity, instruction, this will illuminate, help, so that we may identify our next step, and with this perspective, gradually live what we have to live. Now, so that we may have clarity, we have to be on the path that corresponds to us. We cannot have clarity if we are not experiencing that which is our path and our trajectory. So many feel a little darkened or without clarity on their path because perhaps they are not doing the path that corresponds to them. It's important that clarity comes when we are sincerely and really taking those steps that our consciousness indicates to us. We'll see today with the questions and dreams something that will complement this subject here. And someone frequently dreams with the number 48, not only in the dreams, but in many different places and prices at shops, numbers of houses, etc. It's an interesting number, number 48. Number 4 is the number of matter, what is material, this foundation, which is the number 4, the pillar of three-dimensionality, etheric, physical, emotional, and mental, and the number 8 is a symbol of infinite. The 8 is that symbol of infinite. It may be bringing you a kind of impulse for you to exercise the quest for harmony in your own bodies, in your own personality, in a continuous way, to, to take away from your viewpoint the idea that the effort is something fleeting and that harmony is fleeting. 4 plus 8 is 12, and 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 is the number of intelligent activity. So it's indicating that you should live your daily life seeking this harmony in your matter and knowing that this is a work that is continuous, that will have no end. Because matter coexists with very dissociating energies, and so our matter is summoned on many levels continuously to an adaptation to deal with all these clashes. And here it's very important in this quest for harmony to give a period of this, to stop this, to take away some illusions, the idea that we'll reach some places, that the conflicts will end, that we'll find peace, that is something that will never disturb us again. That would be like a spiritual death. This is not a war drum. It's just our gradually understanding in what world we are and what circumstance we are inserted, so that we may learn how to deal with this. Otherwise, it's like someone who is in the ocean cannot place their feet on sand, and they have the illusion that if they let themselves drown in that, they will survive. They will always have to make a movement to adapt to that circumstance. So it's very interesting, the number 48. So breathe deeply, be patient with yourself, and that's what it's supposed to be. Well, here someone else says that they have dreamt that in their yard or where they were, there were many children in a state of trance, as if they were hypnotized. And they ask, because they saw some influences in the forms of objects, etc., if this existed in some consciousnesses that manipulate some souls while they are in matter. Yes, there exists this. As we were saying in the previous comment, we are in a kind of world, in a kind of planetary experience in which both beings of light coexist, hierarchies of light, but also consciousnesses that are stuck on a natural plane, and even consciousnesses with some degree of evolution, but in a degree of evolution connected to magic, to interference with power, with authority. And as they are consciousnesses that wouldn't have, according to the spiritual law, a permission to be incarnated, they stay, remain in the astral plane or mental plane, especially close to children or sick people or the elderly, to in that fragility of the lack of connection of the bodies due to some kind of fragility or vulnerability. They seek the purity of children or the suffering. Suffering causes a lot of dissociation when it's not well lived. We will dedicate sharing to exclusively to suffering. It brings a weight, but it's a great school. Returning to the context, if there is a dissociation in the astral plane, these consciousness take advantage of these breaches and approach this consciousness or these consciousnesses and situations, and they experience as if they were in that incarnation through that breach. Is that clear? So it's very common, those who can see, they have some kind of sensitivity, they perceive that in these environments there is an overlapping of consciousnesses, because sometimes the person cannot even be well incarnated. Suffering, the age, or sickness, for some reason, this situation exists. In the case of children, naturally, as they are so close to the subtle world, they have just incarnated, so the memory of the abstract world is quite close. So they are very open to what is subtle and abstract. And this mixing, which is the planet Earth, inevitably there is also interference from these less evolved consciousnesses. What should we do? If we deal with children, if you are an educator, if you work at a school or nursery, it's important to be in this attitude of vigilance, attention, because if we are on the spiritual path, well understood, inevitably we will attract something that will maintain the vibration on a certain level and will not create that condition for the approximation of these, the word is strong, but parasites. Well, someone dreams, and it also happens in their daily lives, that they see very close to the paddles. They dream of paddles on the floor, on the ground. They see paddles, or they go by a lake and it's full of paddles. Paddles, when they come out of a flower, it's because their cycle of participating in that flower has ended. So a wind comes or some object touches that flower, and the petals simply come away and they see themselves in that situation. So in symbolic life, a paddle that is seen very often can symbolize that moment in us which we have to change our cycle. A petal that comes away from a flower may mean the abandonment, in a good sense, a surrender of a cycle that has ended. So it's a symbol of this surrender, this the detachment from a previous experience, and it is really a very elevated symbol, as we in general do not know our path, and when we do know, we do not want to go along it. See the complexity of our incarnation. It's complex to be incarnated on planet Earth. It is very complex. So, as in general, our path does not coincide with what we really should live and go through. To speak of surrender, there is a question about surrender, and detachment is sometimes something distant. So we are taken this way or that way, as we saw at the beginning, to even many experiences that are not even ours. And we gradually adhere to many paths that are not ours, which is the path of someone else. And even until today, there are the influencers. Think the degree of blindness of humanity. They need an influencer. How much clarity we have lost of our path. An influencer. I want to be influenced by my soul, by the path I am supposed to live, not by someone else. And they may have a very different understanding of my world. So we become attached to these experiences, and this is a play of these evolutionary forces to create gratification in our experiences so that we may repeat it, so that we become stuck in this play of gratification. And it almost always does not correspond to our path. So, see how important it is to have clarity, to glimpse the horizon that corresponds to us. So, the petals again, this is a symbol of surrender and detachment to something, especially in the West, is very complex because the way of feeling and thinking in the West is to be stuck in this relationship of personality conquest, autonomy, gratification, power. So when the petal falls from us, we even feel suffering of living, the concentration of the flower as it was fertilized, the seed of what eventually is the next step, we become stuck in that. So it is a dream, a symbol that can help you enter this path of surrender. So, stemming from this point of surrender, the person asks, is there a state of a real surrender when we really surrender ourselves? Well, what does exist is a trajectory into a real state of surrender when we seek to reflect, and a strong verb, but so that we may understand, correct the proportion of the attention that we give to the personality and its tendency to autonomy, and the attention that we give to our inner life. We are doing a sharing in a context of awakening of the consciousness to an evolutionary path for consciousness that already suspect that this common life of everyone is not for them, and they are seeking some kind of corridor, hallway to come out of this great confusion. So, as real state of surrender is built, it's a trajectory. Oh, I surrender to the universe. I surrender to the creator. I surrender to light. I surrender to the soul. I surrender to Christ. No, you are on a path of surrender. And if we are really honest, we will see that we surrender, but the next moment we surrender. There is a saying in Brazil that says, "We give up the goat, but we don't surrender we don't give the rope." so we don't release the rope, so it's still stuck. So when we awaken, we start to suspect that there is a higher life, that we are something different, but we think that my life will continue until our last expiration. Something else is to be completely involved with this and forget, oblivious of my true path. So when we awaken to the fact that there is a other life, that something is summoning us and attracting us to something else, then we enter this process of surrender. Okay, now, so that it may really be a path of surrender, we need to release this rope and know that besides our hand that is is there is my hand, the rope, and the goat. So it's a symbol of our experience. We walk around, but there is something behind this hand that holds the rope that should control the experience of the goat. No one should feel offended. Just make an analogy. It's Saturday, so you earn the time smiling, not confused with the experience and matter which is confused by itself. So we have to have the need to release this rope. So while this need does not come, it's just a wish, it's curiosity to experience something broader. We will do a practice, we'll listen to classical music, we'll seek a master, we'll read a positive text, but while it is not vital, while without this we cannot live, while this is a real need, we do not start the path of surrender. We are just preparing for this. We are just approaching the path of surrender, but not we haven't really stepped onto the path. When we really feel this need, we'll see that we find in it a first clash, which is the clash of finding our will, our willingness in this path of surrender. Who does not live this, being frankly speaking? We feel a broader life, we feel this impulse, we want to be more available, we feel the need of surrendering. But when we have to take the step of living this experience, there is our self will attracting or wanting to distract our gaze into something else. This is our clash of awakening when we are incarnated. This is inevitable. It does not happen to just one or another. It happens to all of us because human condition and the impulse for us to transcend the human condition. So I have surrendered. No, you are on the path of surrender. This is more humble because otherwise our own lives will contradict us. If you are surrendered, how can your free will still prevail? Oh, but I have to discern. Of course, we'll talk about discernment later on today. But the path of surrender, it needs to go through this moment, which is the moment that gradually deepens while we are incarnated. Self will is there. Look at the lesson that Jesus had left to us. He might have not taken the chalice. Why did he say, "Let thy will be done, not my will"? If he still had his his will, if he said, "Your will, not my will," it's because he perfectly knew that in the human condition, somewhere respected the proportions, there was a self will that might lead him to a second option. But if Jesus, with his consciousness, left this will of releasing self will, why do we pretend that we do not have self-will. Careful with the mystical ones, religious people, not to transcend self-will before the right time. It is there, and I have to discern what it corresponds to me, to discern and apply the energy of will to discern what my path is and not deviate it with my self will. These are very different things. So that someone goes to the restaurant, what do you want to eat? This is a lack of proportion. We have to discern things of every day, not ask God, what am I supposed to choose? So on the path, you start to exercise the topic of surrender. So we gradually oscillate between self-will and releasing it, and this causes in the mind and the personality a feeling of insecurity that is great. How shall I surrender if I have to make a decision? So that's why the path is an adventure. The spiritual path is an adventure, and we can ask for light on our path. We will apply our will and observe the result of that step which we have taken. We ask for confirmation, for some dream, some kind of indication, and it is this willingness to transcend one's own self-will that gradually gathers the drops, the experiences we have to go through. So then we have the need to live the spiritual path or the need for a broader life. The universe itself will pick the chalice, which is the symbol that is used today, and gradually deposits in it everything that corresponds to our experience, to the degree of offering that we are making. Some make an offering to Christ, to the universe. I live for you. I dedicate myself completely. But in the very first impulse of transcendence, we take a step backwards. So this shows that we have to be very humble when we make an offering and know that this offering will always demand from us a renunciation, resignation, detachment, and do something that we do not like. As we are talking about Jesus, let's remember what he said to Peter. Do you want to follow me? Deny yourself and follow me. Deny yourself and follow me. They are not even 7 words. Very simple. But in practical life, in daily lives, it's not that simple. We oscillate in discovering something broader, between discovering something broader and the need for self-affirmation of ourselves. And this is a discovery. This is a process. This is a long trajectory until the moment comes when our inner world starts to move, and it's going to surrender because it'll discover that our soul, our nucleus that we call the overself, ourselves, on a higher octave of our identity, and the soul starts to surrender. The soul is the one that will surrender to something broader and find the part of what is available for its trajectory. And as it discovers that it needs to surrender to that flame, to our spirit, to the level of ours that is above the soul, it will also project to the personality this impulse that we call abandoning, surrendering of all that is personal for the benefit of something higher that is summoning us. And with this real state of surrender happens, this is a gradual process of awakening. And as we awaken, we begin to exercise the surrendering. I know someone who always, in any situation, even in daily life, they make a movement of asking, is this in the plan? Is this real? Is it part of my path? Very simple things of daily life. So the the mere fact of our inner world, especially our guardian angel, receiving from our consciousness a gesture of this intention of not being submerged in common life, this gradually gathers in this chalice, again, the symbol of an experience that we are supposed to live, the best conditions for us to live this. And sometimes the best condition is precisely the difficulties, some kind of suffering even. Why not some disease for the process to be quicker? It depends on the kind of experience we have to live, and it depends on our temperament. Some need a greater experience and a stronger experience to come out of themselves, and some others who are more docile, who have understood that it's useless to resist, to insist. It's useless to continue on the path they had been until then. They have a different kind of experience. So the real path of surrender is a gradual path. It's always a gradual path. And as I was saying, as a hierarchy was saying some years ago, the stream of the river is always greater where it's least expected. As the personality is quite imprudent, it gradually tests the creator. See how we are arrogant. And we have our experience of keeping the goat in the rope. We don't release it, and we do not know exactly the power of the current. It may be peaceful here, but the river further ahead will drag you. Why do I refer to this situation? Because we never know when the moment has come for our self will has gone, when our self will has gone beyond what it should be doing. So, if we are trying to measure the power of that current in the river, we should let the river take us in the good sense, or if we should struggle with that situation. So the path of surrender is very broad, very beautiful, we might say, and can only be experienced when it is sincere and authentic. When we want to live the experience of surrender without really wanting to surrender, we will suffer. And we will suffer because we have made an offering, and the universe will detach from our experience everything that does not correspond to us. So it takes away gratification, it takes away things that brings us things that bring us human pleasure, possession. And if this intention is not sincere of surrendering, we will suffer. We will hurt ourselves, and even I might say worse than everything else, we might will not like the path of transcendence, which should be a dignified path. So we have to have a lot of sincerity. Those that are greedy, arrogant, who are seeking supernatural things will always find disappointment because they are not sincere. They want to take for themselves an authority and power of a situation that should be the other way around. Surrender is abandoning oneself for higher life and be led by another kind of light and energy. It's not something superficial. Reflect upon that. Here someone asks, how to silence, truly silent, make silence. Silence in the context, in the tone of what the person is asking, it seems that it is the mental and inner silence. While we create a trajectory for ourselves, we attract a noise, a movement of situations, people, resources, things that cause all this noise. It causes this agitation that we experience. In this connection, silence, this self-emptying, this silencing of all this personal initiative, silence gradually establishes itself. But it's not inertia. It's a silence of stability. And when it becomes stable within us, in our consciousness, it is as if we had a glass of water with some substance that is agitating it all the time. So we see this liquid in that glass, and that is moving, and we cannot see in a transparent way what is beyond the glass. Not even the water we can see in a transparent way because the particles are agitated. So we stop agitating the glass, the particles go down, and I manage to discern those layers of particles. This organizes my inner world, and I manage to see what is transparent within myself. So, as how should I make silence truly? What is asking oneself, what is priority for me? And when something that does not coincide with that comes, I let it go and I maintain this state of neutrality, and this silence gradually is established. So we can exercise silence. So from 4 to 5:15, I will do meditation and make silence. No, you will help your bodies to become disciplined, but this does not mean that you will make silence. In Zen Buddhism, it's quite widely known. Those who have experienced that know that will practice Zazen and here, and then the more experienced instructor will come with a cane of bamboo, and they perceive that those who are doing the practice are not in silence. With the cane of bamboo, they touch on the back or shoulder of the person. This is not violence. Human rights, please do not process me, do not sue me. This brother consciousness today is within us. So if we were really attentive with a defined objective of a next step for our path, a quest for clarity for what we have to experience, something in us would give us the touch with that cane of bamboo, and we would think, we would notice, oh, here is a noise that I don't need. So we avoid dispersing our consciousness and becoming distracted with what does not correspond to us. So the silence of practices and exercises, they can help us discipline our bodies, our physical body, our emotional and mental bodies, but they do not create this true silence, inner silence that the self emptying of a personal project will bring. So, within this context, truly making silence is gradually becoming free from one's own perspectives, asking for much light on the personal path, and this silence will establish itself. And then this cane that touches our shoulder will be less continuous, and we will be in a certain kind of stability, will not be taken by surprise with so many stimuli that we receive. Well, here someone says that both in dreams and in the life of awake, they see the color orange in many tones and also the color emerald green. Either they dream of clothes with orange color or houses painted this color or a food with this color and also the emerald green color. And in daily life, they end up seeing all this besides in the dreams. This may be helping you to perceive what you have to work at this moment of your human experience, which is your work for healing and discernment. In other words, not being as impulsive, not being dragged by superficiality, and rather develop your discernment. Emerald green is the color of healing, inner healing. When we are before the emerald green, this attracts our consciousness to an alignment with everything that is deep, that calms us down, and this generates a condition for a inner healing. And orange is the color connected to discernment of a mind that is quite sharp, alive, present, that filters in the good sense, that lives discernment. So you see, both emerald green and orange, this is a healing impulse for discernment, for restructuring discernment. Discernment is not criticism or prejudice. Discernment is a filter. It's almost like a good sense parameter on my path between my path and what comes, and my values on what comes. So I will discern if that coincides or what emerges from my subconscious or my bodies coincide with my path, and I will discern. So discernment in mental experience, it is very important because it is quite determining of where we will put our free will. We discern, and after we discern, the application of will comes. And see how we have to be responsible and have this honesty up on the path. We may discern something, but make a different decision, right? I can discern on my path. My path is this way, but for some reason, or because of a desire, or a memory, or an attachment, I insist on going somewhere else, even though I have discerned that I should have gone that way. So discernment by itself does not solve the situation. I'll have to apply self-will and confirm the path that I have to not only to follow, but what will I want to live? So this dream is indicating this situation. And connected to this, the person asks, when I talk to myself, am I only talking to my mind? Where is my consciousness? The person asks. This is a path also. This is a discovery. We do not have a linear answer to any of these subjects, if you understand me right. We're just expanding our consciousness so that we can live what we have to live. When we are in the mental process, in general, we are having our human person as reference, and everything gravitates around our personal human person. So we are in the mind simply. It's relatively easy to recognize that everything gravitates around it. So I will stay in my memory in the past or in memories or creating a projection for the future, but always I in the middle of this. There'll always be the human person in the situation. When it is our consciousness in our mind, it's also a level of consciousness, mental consciousness. But when it is our consciousness, I am simply present in my consciousness and I begin to perceive that I'm dealing with situations or topics with something that does not relate to myself. So it is how to discern if I am present at the present moment, at this very moment, we are here attracting everything that comprises the channel of instruction. And if I am present, I start to be attracted, each one of us, to that which is necessary for me. So much so that if we ask what each one has understood or assimilated from this sharing, each one will have a different perspective because their minds are different. So when we are present, our consciousness can start to perceive something from a different level which is not something connected to my human person. And when it is the mind, it is in general coming from our own perspective, either to comment or to criticize, or to think it was good or not, or to associate this with the past or generate a projection for the future. So it's not that we have to dispense with the mind. We have to gain ascension over the mind and lead the mind for what our deeper consciousness brings as light and parameter. It's not to dispense with the mind. The mind is a part of our architecture, of our human construction. There is no way to abandon the mind. It would be creating an association. So be very careful. Also, because many who cannot deal with the mind, they try to open the mind to be interfered with by consciousnesses that are there around, in need of some mental body to express themselves. So be very careful. We have to be present with our consciousness, observing what is happening, and seeing, intuiting how our consciousness is dealing with something higher that has nothing to do with our human person. So it is very easy. When we want something from some situation, when we are associating our presence with some situation, we remember some situation, we are in the mind. And our consciousness may be participating in all this, but it'll always bring a broader perspective. It'll be also looking at the past, it will be seeing its participation in some situation, but it'll always bring a touch of something that is not only for us, selfishly speaking. Someone says, why do the errors from the past afflict us so much? They say that during the prayers that they do, these negative thoughts torture them. That's the words they use. And they need a kind of paradigm because they want to pray. But when they start to pray, these negative thoughts harass them. We have to think, we have to ask ourselves if we have forgiven ourselves, if we have really forgiven ourselves. Because oftentimes this suffering, this self torture, is because we haven't managed to work or accept that we can have made a mistake. So behind our difficulty in forgiving ourselves, there is an attitude of arrogance, vanity that is quite big. So we want to pray, we want to do an attunement, we have to open ourselves or have a more harmonious life. And we open to this, that which is still waiting, pending in our consciousness is not a condemnation. Let's understand this. What is pending is our attempt to learn about a wrong step that we have taken. An attitude of arrogance will not allow us to admit that we have made a mistake. So that comes not to torture you. Here is an important key. This is why you don't manage to become liberated from this. That comes to help you see that you're not perfect as a human consciousness, as everything you're evolving. But as in a situation who didn't have the best attitude and you made a mistake. But if you do not admit this, here's the point. If you do not admit this, if you insist, if you are convinced that you have not made a mistake, then this comes to torture you. But it is you who are interpreting this as a torture. This comes as an indicator to tell you This is here. You need to see this. This was not correct. So ask yourselves, do you forgive yourself? Forgive of what? Forgive of having made a mistake. You can only forgive yourself of having made a mistake if you manage to understand that you are an imperfect being, an incomplete being who is awakening, who is expanding your consciousness, and therefore in the past, for sure, was even more imperfect than today and made a mistake as something that is a part of human experience. So the point is not having made a mistake. The point is not admitting that you have made a mistake and not accepting that you may have made a mistake and therefore not forgiving yourself. So to forgive yourself, you have to have this recognition, which historically, who perceived the coming of Christ was not John the Baptist. And what was the key of John the Baptist? Wasn't it baptism, reconversion, repentance? So we have a very basic instruction in Christianity, which is the process of revision of consciousness, the water of life that cleanses us, that converts us into something else. If it's a conversion, if I do not accept that I need a conversion, how will I forgive myself? It's not something of ourselves or in our relationship with ourselves, but also with others. So when something comes, it doesn't come to torture us. It comes to show us that I need to review that, to revise that. I have to admit that I have made a mistake, that I need to forgive myself. And for our minds, and even for our souls, regard depending on the quantity of souls that of incarnations that have been proud, it's very difficult to forgive ourselves because we do not admit to ourselves, how did I made make a mistake? I who was so much. How can I make a mistake? This is why in the East there is a situation. Paul Branta mentioned this. They asked why in the East, in many temples, the person crosses a door and then the next door is smaller. Then they lower their head and then they go through the door. And then they have to bend their knees. That is a symbol of disciplining the body and the mind to be humble, to kneel down and look to the ground. So we who consider ourselves the super Shri Swami, life will show us it's not like that. This may bring some suffering. This is located on the mental plane. Mental plane goes hand in hand with pride and arrogance. They are capital energy, to use a language that we can understand, and we shouldn't play with this. We don't play with the capital energy. So the pride that is in the mind will accompany us until the last moment of our incarnation. It's pointless to try to become free of it. We have to have a sincere, honest attitude, know what we want, understand what we are, and seek clarity to live this path. And as we want to take a step beyond the size of our legs out of greed or ambition, we will suffer. We will have great difficulty and will not manage to forgive ourselves because of our mistakes. This happens within us. Oftentimes, we do not forgive ourselves or we admit that we have made a mistake because we fear that will not be accepted later on. But I have created an image of myself for my children, for friends, for family, for the companions, whatever. So if I admit that I have made a mistake, I will not be accepted as I had been before. Careful. Or is what is even worse, I fear losing control over the others. So how? will I admit that I have made a mistake? I will lose control over the others. See how important it is, the question that the person has made, and how this can bring in us this intention to be humble. As O'Brunton said, as you enter a temple in the East, you have to lower your head and to discipline, even in body language, this movement of humility, so that we may deal with this. And when we leave the body in a restful position, meditate, or create a discipline that may allow us to see the purity of that liquid, which is the liquid in our inner world, and to have clarity on the horizon and not continue to always live in this turbid water of the human experience in general of people. So this is the idea. Ask yourself if you have to forgive yourself, and to forgive, you have to reflect on how you are before humility and the belief about yourself. A reflection that is fundamental for all of us. And lastly, the person asks, how to discern when I am imagining something and when I am really having a contact with something symbolic. I can imagine, I can see a tree in the valley. I am imagining. Imagining is always good also. It helps the mind not to be so concrete. But this is different from a symbol, from symbolic life. Because in imagination, we clearly see, we create this binds with desire. So I want to see an eagle. So I put the beak golden. The valley has the sun, then the lake down there. I create a Hollywoodian scenery, and I place that as a dream. Okay, that may help you. Imagination is part of the process of elevation of the mind. We imagine, we create, we use imagination to create a condition, and we enter this life of plasticity, which is sub-abstract life, subtle life. But symbolic life, we have no control. This comes in a ready way, ready-made way. I saw myself before a valley with an eagle flying. There is no time for that. There's no time to build everything that is presenting itself to me. This is why people send dreams sometimes, and we perceive that the dream started well. The person started to describe something real, and then they started creating a novel in the dream. I saw an orchid, it was bending to the right side. That's what they saw. But then, may I see a bird beneath the orchid? May I see a sun setting? May I add a mountain? That is not normal. It's a part, this is part of the body of desire to create this, but let's not confuse this with symbolic life. Symbolic life comes ready, does not bring any element, doesn't give an opportunity for creation. Dream should be described with everything I saw, and that only that. So people sometimes send a dream. I see clearly that they start describing a dream, so they go somewhere else to a place that is even superfluous. The lesson within this is that what had been a symbolic impulse from the inner world or from this one life that accompanies us becomes something mixed. This can affect at a certain point this language from the symbolic life, or even worse, they may hint to your inner world that has to take a step backwards, and you may start, because you may start to manipulate your impressions, and this is very delicate. Eventually, the more evolved beings who accompany us, or the Creator, whatever way we want to understand it, may be forming us on the line of a symbolic life. However, when that crosses our personality, when it crosses our even our soul, depending on the quantity of lifetimes in which I have been a manipulator, this will become imprisoned in this mechanism, and symbolic life will never be able to translate in a pure way what it wants to translate, because it will always find a manipulator who will change that for their convenience. This is why we talk about impurity, surrender. We talk about purity, surrender, not looking upwards. We are not talking about looking up to see if the sky is blue or white or blue. Just a matter of discerning what's happening, and in this precise and correct intention to see a symbol in everything, not a symbol that is too abstract or important. Many become confused that a symbol, wow, I woke up and I dreamt that Jesus was beside my bed. It doesn't have to be Jesus, you know. There is a prayer that's about the presence that says, God in me and in my brothers and sisters. So everything deep down is a relationship with God. Everything can be a relationship with the universe. Everything. I remember when Triguerini used to say that when the person didn't have a mechanism trained to perceive things internally, José used to say, Triguerini used to say, ask your guardian angel to place before you during the day, to place someone to tell you what you cannot hear from your inner world. This, the person said that the person would buy paint or buy food, and the person said something that someone was talking to them, and they knew it was symbolically from their inner world, or showing something that they had to work from nothing. The person said a word, a sentence, that, and the person knew it was something they needed at that moment. Haven't it happened to you? Someone says something to you, or you know that that's what you needed to hear. So if we had this intention to really evolve, not just step on the same place, which is a very slippery experience, quite pleasant, but very slippery, slippery, slippery. So we continue to step on the same place, we don't move ahead, and we cannot glimpse our real horizon. So, in this sincerity of wanting a real inner life, higher life, not just walk around with the nose thrust ahead, above, but we should remember that there are many dimensions, and that knowing that life is not just what we experience in a human way. In this intention and in this purity and determination, everything becomes a symbol for us. A symbol of what? I don't know. A symbol of my relationship with life. And then intelligence itself, which is an aspect of creation, intelligence will gather all the elements and make them available to us. And in everything, we start seeing symbols. Person asked another day, see how symbolic presence is in everywhere, every day. The person saw a pair of shoes, boots were turned inside, aside, and the one that was turned aside was the left side, the side of the personality. Symbolic life shows you in your daily life that your personality is a little tilted. It's seeing things in a tilted way. So a symbol of life everyday life is showing to them. This can only happen when we make the decision that our life be an evolutionary life. Whatever is the moment we are living, whatever is our point today, there is always a next step. Now, we need to ask for clarity, to seek that clarity so that we may see our next step and start to evolve. I remember there is a recording of Tigrinho from the 80s when someone asks how the process of meditation is. The person starts to meditate, as all of us, body language. I start to pray, and then he said, observe what you're thinking and seek to evolve from that thought. Place that in order. Consider if that has any sense or not, makes any sense or not. That goes to a place and you start to evolve from that your present moment, the way you are and the way you are at this moment. Evolution can only happen from the 0 point where we are today, the point where I am today, not the point as if I had done the point where I am right now. So life is symbolic. Everything can help us understand this. So I'm recording here, for example, and the camera is right between two trees that are distant from one side and the other. The camera is right at the middle. No one picked a ruler to measure this. So while I was doing the sharing, I was being helped by these trees to live this alignment and symmetry. I could see the symmetry, and this symmetry was helping me do this sharing here. And the person didn't think about it before. So the camera didn't think I'll be putting it here. No, it's exactly in this wood. And the trees to each side do this. They lead us to the intuitive side. So it's daily life. So we don't have to see Jesus as Mary or a vessel. We have to be simpler, so that when and if really a hierarchy presents themselves, this will be something that will really change our life. This is a way that we can see that it's not Jesus or Mary, because our lives would be different otherwise. So we have to be humbler, to have more gratitude, and observe everything that we are interacting with as a light to bring clarity for our next step. Okay? Very well. So our next sharing will be on the 30th. In 14 days, it'll be a public sharing. Bring your questions, dreams, and we'll create this content. Let's put the shoes in the right size so that it's not tilted, so the personality can walk together with our intuition and our inner world. Have a good Saturday. Until next time.